The human mind has always sought to understand the world around it, to explain the phenomena and processes occurring around us. The vast majority of these processes can now be explained, though at one time they all seemed inexplicable. How would a primitive person behave in the modern world? For them, almost everything would likely appear anomalous. The line between what we perceive as ordinary or anomalous depends on our level of knowledge. Even today, we are somewhat like primitive people in the face of certain inexplicable phenomena. Only by understanding them and discovering the causes behind them can humanity take the next step in its development. Many questions arise today. What is telepathy, where one person can read another's thoughts from a distance? What is retrocognition, the ability to learn about a stranger's past? What is clairvoyance, the ability to sense their present state, or even more puzzling, predict the future? How is it possible to look at a photograph of a person to determine their health, where they are located, or even whether they are alive or dead? How is it possible to move objects or make them weightless solely through the effort of will or a mental command? What causes the unusual phenomenon of poltergeist, where objects in an apartment start moving on their own, dishes break, and so on? How do dowsers find different objects and substances underground? Their ability has already been successfully used in mineral exploration. Are all these anomalies separate, unrelated phenomena, or are they various manifestations of the same, as yet unclear laws of nature and the human psyche? The conservatism of human thinking, the confidence that the fundamental laws of the world around us have already been discovered, hinders the objective analysis and understanding of these phenomena. They also cannot be ignored, as a sufficient amount of evidence has already been collected that undeniably confirms their reality. In the nature of anomalous phenomena, there seems to be something specifically embedded that appears to us as irrational and mysterious. Whatever it is, it cannot be detected using generally accepted methods of observation and research. However, these phenomena can reveal the real world in all its diversity and hopefully stimulate the development of new methods of understanding it. Among these anomalies, unidentified flying objects occupy a prominent place. However, this term does not accurately convey the nature of the matter. First, what does unidentified mean? Second, UFOs not only fly but can land and submerge in water. And finally, can we even call something that can disappear without a trace an object? The term flying saucers is vivid but does little to clarify the phenomenon. They are also called astro-levitating objects, meaning those that fly from the stars. However, as will become evident later, the most accurate term for them would likely be energy information clusters. Nonetheless, for the sake of convention, we will continue to use the term UFO. For a long time, this topic was almost forbidden in many countries. Periodically, the press published assertions that UFOs were not anomalous and that everything could be explained by natural atmospheric phenomena, such as meteors, satellites, balloons, rocket launches, etc. Indeed, statistics show that 85 to 90% of unusual sky observations can be explained in this way. However, the remaining 15% do not fit into any natural events. Of course, these cases were ignored. They fell outside the framework of the dominant ideology, just as genetics, cybernetics, and the theory of relativity did for a long time. However, the military departments of certain countries immediately recognized the significance of this phenomenon. Since the mid-1940s, they began systematically studying UFOs, but the results of these studies are largely classified. Moreover, US military departments organized a disinformation campaign on this issue. When a UFO crash occurred in the US in 1947, a group called Majestic 12 was formed to investigate the case. Soon, one of its members, astrophysicist Donald Menzel, wrote a book called On Flying Saucers, in which he denied the reality of UFOs. The Colorado Project, led by Professor Edward Condon, also dismissed UFOs as natural phenomena. Our media often cited these sources, supporting the position that UFOs do not exist. Sociologists say that only 1 in 10 witnesses report their encounter with a UFO. If we consider that most of them fly at night when people are asleep, this figure should be multiplied by 10. Thus, an average of 20,000 UFOs appear annually over the US. It can be assumed that the frequency of their appearance over other countries is no less. So the issue is not whether UFOs are real. The issue is what is their true nature and the reasons for their more frequent appearance in recent years. Let's consider an important question. Is the UFO phenomenon new, or has it been observed for a long time? Well, it turns out that this problem is not new at all. It can be said that the UFO issue is as old as the world itself. It has existed as long as humanity has existed. Paleontologists have found drawings on cave walls made 15,000 years ago depicting disc-shaped objects. Ancient Egyptian chronicles mention the appearance of brightly glowing discs in the sky. Sometimes gods emerged from them. Similar records are found in the chronicles of many ancient cultures. Some parts of the Bible can be interpreted as visits to Earth by extraterrestrials. The ascension of Christ into heaven, for example, could be interpreted as a UFO event. In the legends of the Inca tribes, there are mentions of beautiful, fair-skinned people who arrived on a huge, shiny ship. In Mexico, a sarcophagus was found shaped like a rocket. On its stone lid, there is a drawing resembling a vehicle of some sort, with a figure inside sitting like a cosmonaut, holding instruments on a control panel. Ancient visitations could also explain the astonishingly deep knowledge of ancient peoples in astronomy, physics, and the structure of the universe. When taken overall, it creates the impression that there was an ancient advanced science in the distant past, fragments of which have survived to this day. For example, the semi-wild people of the African Dogon tribe once knew the location of stars and the movement of planets. They were aware that Sirius had a companion star with an orbital period of 50 years. Modern data show it to be 49.9 years. And they knew about the extreme density of Sirius, among many other facts. These astonishing truths were first described by the French researcher Maurice Grioule in his book The Pale Fox. And what can be said about a world map, compiled by navigator Peri Reis, discovered in the early 16th century, which shows continents not yet found at that time, including Antarctica? What's even more impressive is that the map is derived from even older sources, yet it appears to be based on satellite imagery taken from 5,000 kilometers above Cairo. On a 14th century fresco in Novgorod, the Archangel Gabriel is depicted holding a sphere. Strangely, the sphere bears a drawing that almost replicates a photograph of Jupiter's surface, recently obtained from the American spacecraft Mariner. I could compile a much longer list of anomalies to indicate knowledge of space in ancient times. But let's move on. Many more oddities have manifested in our past. The knowledge of ancient peoples seemed to appear out of nowhere, with some of it being incomprehensible to modern science. Some methods used by ancient jewelers, such as metal and diamond processing, cold welding, and electrolysis for gold plating, are somehow at the level of modern technology. During excavations in modern Iraq, objects resembling vases were found, and inside them were layers of metal and resinous substances. When these objects were filled with an electrolyte, they produced voltage, suggesting they functioned like a kind of galvanic cell. However, creating such items required significant knowledge of electricity. It can be assumed that the energy from these cells was used for some purpose, but what was that purpose? In 1976, an ancient metal fragment the size of a fist was found on the Vashka River. It produced sparks when struck or processed. Analysis showed that it mainly consisted of rare earth elements: cerium, lanthanum, neodymium. Further research concluded that such an alloy could have been made from a mixture of powders with different crystalline structures, using cold pressing under the pressure of tens of thousands of atmospheres. However, even the most advanced earthly technology is currently incapable of such feats. To this day, the methods used to build certain ancient structures, such as the Egyptian pyramids, remain unsolved. Built with millions of stone blocks of astonishing size, they seem almost supernatural constructions. All these strange facts support the hypothesis of paleo contact with extraordinarily advanced beings at various times throughout history. Interestingly, if accurate, the knowledge was only provided in fields that could not harm humanity. There is no evidence of receiving military knowledge. When all the pieces of evidence are reassembled, they create the impression that humanity has been under observation from space throughout its development. Increasingly, there is reason to believe that the seeds of life were brought to Earth from space, possibly not in the form of molecular structures, but as informational fields that determined the further evolution of life on Earth. In any case, Charles Darwin's theory must be questioned now, since many scientists believe that the DNA molecule could not have arisen through natural evolution. It can also be assumed that religion in its existing forms and external attributes, such as icons, frescoes, and depictions of saints, arose as a result of people witnessing UFO visits to Earth. Furthermore, some suggest that religion itself was introduced to humanity via extraterrestrials for the best possible reasons, to divert it from potential mistakes. Religion became a kind of manual for humans, laying out the creation of the world and norms of behavior by which people should be guided in order to continuously improve. However, this view is controversial. For example, Felix Yurievich Ziegel believed that attempts to interpret the content of religious books in the light of contact with cosmic intelligence are unlikely to be productive. He stated that it would sound like nonsense to a modern materialist scientist and like blasphemy to a believer. If UFOs are an ancient phenomenon, why are there so many conflicting opinions about them? The main reason lies in the variety of manifestations of unidentified flying objects, which the human mind cannot explain. It is easiest to attribute these perceptions to peculiarities of people's mental states. However, even if we assume that UFO sightings are the result of mass psychosis, what then is the cause of this phenomenon? The fact that UFO sightings cannot be explained solely by people's mental state is supported by the fact that these objects leave physical traces of their presence. For example, melted pieces of glass and asphalt were found in Petrozavodsk in 1977 after a bright jellyfish-shaped object appeared over the city, emitting thin, radiant streams onto the area. Several cases of the physical influence of UFOs on earthly objects have been documented. One such case occurred in 1985 when a UFO helped lift an overloaded train off a slope. Many people witnessed this event. It is known that UFOs react differently to planes approaching them. There have been cases where engines failed or planes disintegrated mid-air. In other instances, UFOs evaded pursuit as if they were playing. Here's a case of teasing a helicopter by a UFO. In 1973, an American military helicopter was on a routine flight when the pilot saw an unknown object glowing and moving on a parallel course. Suddenly, it sharply changed direction and headed straight for the helicopter. Fearing a collision, the pilot began an emergency descent. When he estimated that only a few dozen meters remained before hitting the ground, he checked the altimeter. It showed an altitude of 50 meters. The UFO lifted the helicopter to approximately 1,200 meters and then left. The rest of the flight proceeded normally. Pilots have also reported that UFOs illuminated safe paths for them through storm clouds. UFO landings may occur for a number of reasons, such as replenishing water supplies, taking samples of soils, minerals, and plants, or making contact with humans. At the landing sites, concentric circles are often left on the ground. Sometimes changes in plants, inhibition of microorganism development, and melted metal balls are observed. A kind of protective field usually remains in these areas for a long time. People who stay in the landing zone for an extended period may experience significant changes in blood composition, a decrease in hemoglobin levels, and oxygen deprivation, which can lead to loss of consciousness. A detailed study of such places, including measuring air ionization levels, radioactivity, chemical compositions, soil conductivity, electric and magnetic fields, and biological objects present there, would provide valuable information about UFOs. Unfortunately, such measurements are conducted very rarely, without a systematic approach, and usually by enthusiasts. Another question arises: why is the study of the UFO problem not taken seriously by science? After all, science always seeks to uncover nature's mysteries, and in this case, there are undoubtedly many mysteries. If studied properly, they could fundamentally change our worldview. However, the attitude of our academic science to this problem is, at best, neutral. There are several reasons for this. First, most orthodox scientists dare not undertake research that requires a complete revision of the very concept of scientific inquiry. Second, UFO-related phenomena do not fit traditional research methods. There is no repeatability of results, and experiments cannot be repeated at will. Finally, such research will not lead to academic degrees or recognition and is more likely to provoke ironic smiles from defenders of so-called pure science. Will science ever answer questions about the nature of these phenomena, why they occur in the way they do, and why they appear on Earth? The great German poet and thinker Johann Wolfgang von Goethe remarked that in science we can only know how something happens, not why or for what purpose. The position of religion on UFOs is almost the same as that of science. It attempts to keep a distance from the problem. Perhaps, in this case, a philosophical interpretation is needed, one that encompasses the wisdom of previous generations and the intellect of modern humans. This could serve as a guide in the search for answers regarding the origin of UFOs and the reasons for their appearance on Earth. Many strange transformations are associated with unidentified flying objects. Some defy any reasonable explanation, at least from a traditional point of view. This is the main reason for the skepticism of many scientists regarding this issue. The most characteristic feature of UFOs is polymorphism, the absence of a constant form. They can be disc-shaped, spherical, egg-shaped, cylindrical, jellyfish-like, triangular, and so on. Often something resembling windows is observed on their surface. Sometimes UFOs appear with blurred or torn edges. One UFO can break into several smaller ones, and one form can transform into another. UFOs accompanying an airplane may take on a shape similar to the aircraft. On one occasion, an unidentified object split into 8 parts, and after some time, they merged again. After landing, 3 figures exited from it. This prompts the obvious question, where were they during the division? According to eyewitnesses who observed UFO landings, they appear as metallic, rigidly constructed apparatuses. But how, then, do such shape changes occur, and why are they done? It is unlikely to be merely to demonstrate these effects to people or to show off in some way. The size of UFOs also varies widely. Roughly, the following types of these crafts can be distinguished. Probes measure 30 to 90 centimeters in diameter and are usually spherical or disc-shaped. These are likely pre-programmed or remotely controlled devices. Small UFOs measure 1 to 5 meters and play an auxiliary role. Standard UFOs in the form of discs are generally 7 to 12 meters in diameter. Approximately 50% of sightings involve these. Large UFOs can measure several dozen meters in diameter. Some witnesses have reported some as being larger than a football field. Carrier ships shaped like cigars or cylinders can be up to 1 kilometers long. These fly at great altitudes without approaching the Earth. Some ufologists believe that ball lightning is also a type of UFO. Sometimes elements of intelligence are observed in their behavior, which cannot be explained by natural phenomena. In any case, this list points to a fairly extensive arsenal of different types of UFOs, each of which presumably has its own purpose. The speed of flight ranges from hovering motionless to flying rapidly in the atmosphere at 20 kilometers per second. UFOs glide through the air and move without any visible mechanisms. At full speed, they can abruptly change flight direction, seemingly without any noticeable effect on their occupants. There are numerous recorded cases of UFOs being observed underwater. For example, the Russian expeditionary vessel Vladimir Vorobyov observed glowing rings with a diameter of 120 to 150 meters flashing in the depths of the Indian Ocean. Its sonar detected a large object underwater at a depth of 20 meters. Then, one light ring split into 8 sectors with radiant rays that began to rotate, bend, and eventually dissolve. On underwater sonar screens, objects have been repeatedly detected, moving at speeds of up to 300 kilometers per hour and rapidly descending to depths of 6 kilometers while withstanding pressures of 600 atmospheres. Here's one strange observation from the deep freeze, a military exercise of the US Navy. Something pierced through 3 meters of ice and, in the form of a huge silvery ball, disappeared into the sky. Ice blocks were thrown into the air tens of meters high. They crashed down around the massive hole in the ice, where the water was churning and steam was rising from the surface. How can such incredible qualities be combined in one object? Why is there such a wide variety of UFO shapes, and what source of energy allows them to perform such unbelievable maneuvers both in the air and underwater? In terms of aerodynamic properties, disc-shaped bodies are quite suitable for movement in the atmosphere. There are already models of craft whose performance in some aspects surpasses that of airplanes. There is information that during World War II, a group of German engineers developed a project for a large disc-shaped flying machine. This craft was even tested in 1944 and demonstrated relatively high technical qualities. Germany's defeat in the war prevented the completion of this work. Other UFO shapes that have been observed in no way meet the requirements for optimal flight in any environment. It seems as if it doesn't matter where they fly, which is only possible if they can create a vacuum around themselves. Allow us to at least approximately imagine the mechanism of UFO movement in the atmosphere. They usually glow, surrounded by a fiery sphere, something like a plasma layer. This could result from the annihilation of virtual particles and antiparticles. In this case, a micro-vacuum is created around the UFO, and the craft, by displacing the surrounding medium, moves as if in a void, without resistance. In this case, the shape of the craft does not matter. We don't yet know how to use vacuum energy, but perhaps they have solved this problem and have access to a virtually inexhaustible energy source. This explains why UFO flight at enormous speeds in the atmosphere is not accompanied by a shockwave. There simply isn't one because there is a vacuum in front of the craft. A supersonic plane compresses the air in front of it, while a UFO pushes it aside. Similarly, UFOs move underwater and break through thick ice or soil. An ordinary object would be instantly crushed by such an impact. Another question arises: how can UFOs instantly accelerate, suddenly stop, and change direction at sharp angles, sometimes at full speed? This is only possible for a body without inertia, but any mass has inertia. Could it be that they can overcome inertia as well? One possible explanation for this phenomenon is provided by the theory of the unified physical field, which is determined by 3 components: electric, magnetic, and gravitational. If, under certain conditions, one field component can be compensated for by another, this would mean that at the moment of sudden acceleration or stop, the gravitational vector of the field is somehow compensated by the electric or magnetic vector. In this case, no overloads would affect the craft or the people inside. Externally, this might appear as a bright flash from the UFO. This is precisely what is observed when UFOs appear out of nowhere. First, a flash, and then the usual glow of the plasma layer around the craft. The disappearance of a UFO may be associated with an instant acceleration of 10 to 20 kilometers per second, which the human eye cannot perceive. There are reports in the press of a secret experiment conducted in the US in 1943 to test the possibility of achieving an anti-gravity effect. In this experiment, a military ship was subjected to a powerful magnetic field overlaid with an electromagnetic field. According to one eyewitness, when the impact of the experiment began, a dense green fog appeared. Soon the entire ship was filled with this green fog and gradually disappeared from view, leaving only a trace on the water. Witnesses claimed that the ship teleported to another base, and only after the magnetic and electromagnetic fields were deactivated, returned to its original location. The entire crew suffered from severe psychological shock. The experiment was conducted based on Albert Einstein's unified field theory. Although this event differs significantly from what is observed during the appearance and disappearance of UFOs, it may involve the same phenomenon. The problem of instantaneous movement through space can be approached from another angle. The term instantaneous can be interpreted as a consequence of a sharp change in the flow of time. This idea stems from the concept of time density, developed by the well-known Soviet astronomer N.A. Kozyrev. The essence of this idea is that any change in the entropy or orderliness of space generates waves of time density that propagate instantly. It is known that the entropy of a system can be changed using energy. This then outlines a hypothetical scenario for interstellar travel. The energy that a spacecraft accumulates from vacuum energy causes a local change in entropy, which in turn leads to a shift in time density, followed by a change in the state of space. As the spacecraft accelerates, the space around it becomes increasingly rarefied or dissolves entirely. As a result, the craft disappears from our space and becomes invisible. While in this state, it faces no threat of collision with stars or planets, and its speed can presumably be as high as desired. When approaching the desired point in space, the reverse process occurs. By changing the density of time, the state of space around the craft is altered again, but now in the direction of compression. When the compression reaches the usual value for space, the craft appears as if from nowhere. In this case, distance is irrelevant, and the entire flight could take mere seconds. The compression of space around the craft produces interesting effects. An observer sees a glowing sphere several meters in size, but in reality it may be a vast ship. Some contactees expressed surprise at being led through long corridors inside a UFO that, from the outside, seemed relatively small. Since space compression leads to a change in the flow of time, it also explains the significant differences in the perception of time by Earthlings inside the UFO compared to those outside. An interesting idea about the existence of time quanta, chronons, was proposed by A.I. Vainik of the Belarusian Academy of Sciences. In his opinion, chronal phenomena play no lesser a role in nature than thermal or electrical phenomena, but detecting them is pretty tricky. Chronons affect gravity, as evidenced by the fact that a rotating object slightly changes its weight. This results in a flow of chronal matter that creates an internal lifting force capable of influencing the weight of an object. Vainik also observed the effect of time alteration using a device he constructed, similar to a capacitor with layers of different materials, which he believed could absorb chronal matter from the environment and concentrate it within itself. With the help of such a capacitor, he was able to significantly influence the decay rate of radioactive thorium by 7%. Based on his measurements, Vainik believed that the chronal field is the main component of the biofield, which, in addition to this, has light, thermal, electrical, and magnetic components. His observations of psychics suggest that they can generate chronal streams, and conversely perceive such streams from others. Neither the nervous, genetic, nor hormonal systems can react with the required speed. Only chronal radiation can serve as the medium through which each cell signals its state and receives what it needs. This radiation is also a universal language between representatives of different species of plants and animals, enabling them to sense each other. Chronal fields form during various cataclysms, especially during stresses in the Earth's crust. That is why animals, much more sensitive to them than humans, react in advance to approaching earthquakes. The release of powerful chronal streams occurs during nuclear explosions, as evidenced by the fact that American soldiers present at nuclear weapon tests briefly saw their skeletons. This same cause explains why the bright beams from UFOs do not blind people and do not illuminate the surrounding area. They are gamma rays, which under the influence of chronons, become visible but retain their properties of weak absorption by matter. The same applies to the glow of ball lightning. Vainik believed that UFOs use chronal fields. They can create them in a closed loop using streams of elementary particles, for which the disk shape is ideal, since the speed of chronons greatly exceeds the speed of light. UFOs can travel vast distances. Moreover, the ability of UFOs to move freely in water and through the ground is explained by the fact that bodies charged with chronal matter repel each other. So by creating a powerful chronal stream in the direction of the ship's path, any medium can be pushed aside, allowing the craft to move as if in a vacuum. In space, this could solve the problem of protection from meteoroids, as the chronal beam disperses and deflects any objects. Such a chronal field also helps the occupants of UFOs avoid overloads during sharp changes in speed, since increasing this field say by 100 times, would stretch the flow of time by 10,000 times, making the overloads entirely tolerable. Finally, regarding the free hovering of UFOs above the Earth's surface, calculations show that if a gyroscope is spun at 300,000, 400,000 revolutions per minute, it could completely lose its weight because it transfers its rotational energy into the gravitational field. The natural realization of this possibility is the circular vortex, a tornado, that can lift and transport heavy objects over great distances. This same ability may be used by UFOs. No matter how fantastic these hypotheses may seem to us, they do not contradict fundamental physical laws. In principle, concepts like time density and chronons may play a significant role in real-world events, but we do not perceive them because we don't know how to measure them. It is also worth noting that some scientists, based on astronomical observations, believe that theoretical particles, gravitons, are capable of moving faster than light. Our science has yet to detect them experimentally, but if other civilizations had mastered different forms of energy, movement through space at incredible speeds would not be a problem for them. The fact that UFO occupants possess energy sources unknown to us is evidenced by the existence of protective fields around UFOs. In cases where our visitors do not intend to contact Earthlings, they surround their ship with a powerful energy field. This has the following effects on a person trying to approach the UFO landing site. Psychological, a feeling of uncertainty or fear experienced at a distance of 50 to 100 meters. Physiological, unpleasant smells, hydrogen sulfide, burnt materials, illness, loss of consciousness, at a distance of 20 to 50 meters. Physical, an invisible springy net that pushes the person back, up to 10 meters. And destructive, which can end in death from paralysis or other causes. In this regard, it can be noted that accidental encounters with UFOs are mostly not dangerous, but it is better to move away from them immediately. Any attempts to approach, and especially to act hostile, could end tragically. There are reports of brave individuals who began shooting at UFOs with firearms. The result of such actions was always the same. A beam from the UFO immobilized them or caused severe illness, even death. Many cases of abductions involve people whose subsequent fate remains unknown. According to some sources, 5% of people who disappear without a trace have been abducted by UFOs. Astonishingly, this could mean up to 100,000 people are abducted by UFOs every year and are never seen again. Here is a description of an attempted abduction that did not go according to plan. As the evening shift at a factory on the outskirts of Marseille was coming to an end, one of the workers left 15 minutes early to wait for the tram at the stop. Suddenly, she felt her body being wrapped in a radiant net and lifted into the air. She began to scream loudly. At that moment, a large group of workers approached and saw the UFO and the woman, who had already been lifted high into the air. The shouts of the people and the woman's cries caused the UFO to gently lower her to the ground and quickly disappear. We should discuss the unusual beams that emanate from UFOs. Along with diffuse glow, they can emit bright concentrated beams similar to laser beams. But their properties are astonishing and in no way align with our understanding of the electromagnetic nature of light. These beams can slowly extend from the UFO and abruptly stop without dispersing. They can also slowly retract back into the craft. Sometimes, the beams do not appear as a continuous stream, but rather as separate dashes. These beams do not necessarily spread in a straight line. They can bend in an arc. If such a beam encounters an opaque object, it spreads over it like a liquid and continues to propagate in a straight line. As already mentioned, this beam does not illuminate the surrounding area, and even when very bright, it does not blind a person. Within the cross-section of the beam, a force field arises, which can lift and lower various objects, including people. A person targeted by such a beam may feel significant physical pressure, even to the point of bruising or fractures in different parts of the body. Sometimes the beam is hollow, like a tube or cylinder, and humanoids can descend to Earth through it. The diameter of the beams ranges from a few centimeters to several meters. The range of effects of UFO beams is extensive. They may not affect a person at all, or they may heal, or on the contrary, paralyze or kill. These beams can block the operation of electrical and electronic devices, melt metal, destroy rockets, and more. From these examples, it is clear that the technical capabilities of UFOs are incomparable to the state of our technology. They undoubtedly utilize natural laws and phenomena that are still unknown to us, and this is perceived as an anomaly, inexplicable from our point of view. In the previous sections, we mainly discussed the scientific and technical aspects related to UFOs. However, the most mysterious phenomenon is the appearance of humanoid beings and their psychic influence on the people they contact. Who are these beings, humans or robots? Primary creations of nature or products of highly developed civilizations? Are they beings endowed with conscious intelligence and certain spiritual and moral qualities, or are their actions driven by pre-programmed instruction? In most cases, the actions of the visitors represent an intelligent response to specific circumstances. They generally try to avoid contact with Earthlings while carrying out their mission on our planet, although sometimes they initiate contact themselves. There is some evidence that part of the UFO crew are living, extraordinarily intelligent humanoid beings. Among UFO crews, both men and women are observed. For robots, even ones of cosmic origin, such gender distinctions would be unnecessary. The silver metallic-like suits of the UFO occupants likely protect them from the electromagnetic radiation created by the operation of radar stations, radio, and television stations. Such suits are not worn by others, who are most likely robots performing auxiliary functions. Finally, the different heights of the visitors may be related to the varying gravity on their home planets. In this regard, it is interesting to note that according to American scientist R. Hansen, the optimal height for future humans on Earth is about 90 centimeters, as they will not require great physical strength. In terms of energy efficiency, this is the most advantageous height. There are several types of human encounters with UFOs. The vast majority belong to first-type contacts, where these objects are observed visually from a great distance. Second-type contacts occur when witnesses accidentally or intentionally find themselves near a UFO landing site. In third-type contacts, people communicate with UFO occupants. There are also fourth-type contacts, abductions, and fifth-type contacts, where telepathic communication with a higher intelligence takes place. Among them are also humanoid beings with flippers instead of feet and very long arms that almost reach the ground. There are also a large number of robots of various appearances. The clothing of UFO occupants is often described as metallic overalls without visible fastenings, and they usually wear hoods made of the same material. They frequently wear helmets that obscure their faces. They move very quickly, and sometimes it seems as if they are gliding across the ground without touching it. Cases of levitation have been described not only of the UFO occupants, but also of stones around them. They usually hold something resembling a tube or case, from which beams sometimes flash, directed at people attempting to approach them without invitation. At best, this beam renders people immobile, but the effects of such exposure can be much more severe. Possessing the secrets of telepathy, UFO occupants can tap into a person's thoughts, gauge their level of development, and assess their emotional and mental state. Many contactees have noted that as soon as they thought about the UFO or looked in its direction, a light beam from the object found them. So what happens in the last three types of contacts? As a rule, it is a very powerful psychic influence on people, suppressing their consciousness and subjugating their will. Sometimes people are invited inside the UFO, where conversations are held on everyday topics. Sometimes devices are demonstrated or experiments are conducted on them. Occasionally, Earthlings, according to their accounts, make journeys around our planet, to other planets in the solar system, or to planets of other stars located tens or hundreds of light years away. There is documentary evidence from dozens, possibly hundreds, of people who describe their state and impressions during such flights, as well as the planets they claim to have visited. In many details, their descriptions match. Some of this information was obtained under hypnosis, and there is no reason to suspect these people of intentional deceit. However, the content of these reports is very similar to hypnotic suggestions of specific information by the UFO occupants. The story of American couple Betty and Barney Hill in 1961 has become almost classic. They were driving in their car when they saw a glowing, unknown object above them. When this object landed near the road, the car engine stalled, and they saw a disc with portholes, behind which stood some beings. After that, both of their memories blacked out, and when they regained consciousness, they were 35 miles from where the UFO encounter had occurred. Moreover, at that moment, the car was moving, and Barney did not understand how they had traveled that distance without an accident. In a daze, they drove home. Both were under great stress and initially remained silent about their encounter. However, later they agreed to undergo hypnosis and tell everything that had happened. Under hypnosis, when only the subconscious is active, the possibility of any fantasy is excluded. Here is what they revealed. Humanoid beings in uniforms led them onto the ship. They examined their skin and, using some device, also examined their internal organs. They spoke to them in English. They showed Betty a three-dimensional holographic star map with lines drawn on it. They explained that the thick lines represented trade routes, the thin ones periodic flights, and the dotted ones future expeditions. During one of the hypnotic sessions, Betty drew the map from memory. The interpretation of the image showed that the aliens' planet was located 30 light-years from Earth. A natural question arises. Why did they come to us? And if this is one of their trade routes, what are they taking from Earth? An incredible case of teleportation, disappearance and reappearance after a particular time, is described in the magazine Paris Match. According to many witnesses, the car of Parisien François Fontaine was suddenly enveloped in a bright, glowing mist. The mist then took the shape of a tube, rose into the sky, and disappeared. Fontaine also vanished with the car. He reappeared a week later and initially could not remember what had happened to him. Gradually, his memory returned, and Fontaine recalled finding himself in a room with white walls. "When I woke up," he said, "they started talking to me. They are very intelligent, wise people. They avoid contact with us, fearing that their knowledge will be used for harmful purposes." Here is one instance of contact that took place in Kyiv on July 4, 1989. Two women and a young girl were strolling in Hydro Park in the evening when they saw a boat with 3 people inside the Dnieper River. They were all dressed in silver-colored clothing and looked identical. As they approached, the people in the boat said they had come from another planet whose location was beyond our understanding. It turned out that they take one person from Earth every day, and this time they had come for that purpose. They spoke German. Then the guests offered the women a tour of their ship. The women suddenly felt themselves irresistibly drawn toward a silver structure resembling a barrel with an antenna. Yielding to the women's pleas not to take them, the UFO occupants, without expressing any emotion, agreed. "Okay, we will find someone else." The door of the barrel opened, the occupants entered, and their ship silently ascended, turning into a tiny star within seconds. Another testimony comes from a contactee near Stockholm. In a field, he saw a large spherical object shimmering in all the colors of the rainbow. When he approached, a slit opened on the UFO's surface, resembling a watermelon cut. From it, a silver-blue humanoid figure slowly emerged, followed by a light whistling sound. Something lifted the contactee and gently pulled him inside a sphere. He was amazed to find that the interior dimensions of the ship were about 4 times larger than its exterior. Someone approached and placed a helmet on his head. Almost immediately, the contactee no longer heard, but instead felt a voice directly in his head. It was explained to him that language is a reflection of thought, and thought is a combination of fields, which, like memory, are universal throughout the universe. Therefore, they have no linguistic difficulties. Next, a silver screen appeared before the contactee, displaying the solar system, which, as he was told, had been extracted from his memory. He answered questions about life on Earth and described social relationships and wars. Since he could not explain scientific achievements, he recommended they make direct contact with scientists. Instantly, an image of Albert Einstein appeared on the screen. Finally, with the contactee's consent, they recorded his entire memory. Afterward, the helmet was removed, he floated back through the opening and stood on the ground. The sphere closed, began to glow and shimmer with pearly shades, then it became almost transparent. It then shot upward and disappeared into the sky within 2 to 3 seconds. Since such phenomena contradict known physical laws, this could be explained by the possibility that the UFO occupants truly utilize hypothetical capabilities similar to those described in the previous section. It is also noteworthy that none of the contactees are scientists who could have described their experiences more knowledgeably. It is also doubtful that the atmosphere and other climatic conditions on those planets are so compatible with Earth's that it would be easy to breathe there. Therefore, it is more likely that these stories result from the suggestion of certain scenarios to the people involved. This is also supported by the lack of logical consistency in the description of events, a characteristic of dreams. However, this does not entirely rule out the possibility that the contactees may have been shown genuine images corresponding to what actually happens on other planets. Even if our own hypnotists can compel a person to perform seemingly incredible actions, the UFO occupants undoubtedly possess the ability to exert a much greater influence. With their access to volumetric holograms that simulate any environment, they can easily create the illusion of various events with the full effect of real presence and participation for the person involved. There is, however, one significant difference. People who have been dehypnotized do not remember what happened to them during hypnosis. In contrast, contactees retain, if not all, then at least some part of what happened to them during encounters with UFOs. Yet even here, there are cases of complete memory loss for a certain period. Therefore, it seems that the UFO occupants themselves decide what can remain in people's memories and what should not, meaning they provide limited but targeted information. Unfortunately, such information often contains externally impressive but largely insignificant details. There is also apparent disinformation at times. However, in some cases, which will be discussed in the final section, other types of data are also received. One cannot help but get the impression that UFOs are studying our level of physical development, intelligence, and spirituality as they examine our reactions to what they say and show. In general, we serve as experimental subjects for them. But if they can freely read human thoughts, why complicate the process of making contact? And why choose people who are not the most intellectually developed? As will become clear later, what we call UFOs actually represent a variety of phenomena from both earthly and cosmic origins. Only a portion of these objects, based on an analysis of their actions, come into direct contact with humans, and they do not belong to the highest category in the hierarchy of UFOs. Such contacts are dangerous for humans because communication with beings possessing powerful energy different from that of our bodies can significantly affect a person's health. Indeed, some contactees have gained extrasensory abilities, but in other cases, there have been disruptions in both their physical and mental health. It seems that the most negative impact might come from ghost UFOs, which appear as vague, blurry forms. Only a portion of the people in a group of observers may see them. A simple method has been suggested to distinguish these from other UFOs. While looking at such an object, close your eyes for about 10 seconds. If it is a material object whose image is perceived by the retina of the eyes, nothing will be visible during this time. However, if its influence is the result of a psychic effect transmitted directly to our subconscious, the object will still be visible with closed eyes. This is analogous to how contactees perceive the language of UFO occupants, not through their hearing, but with a specific part of the brain. One explanation for why UFOs visible to the eye sometimes do not appear on film is that they appear in our space discreetly, in an impulse mode, and at the moment the camera shutter opens, they are not illuminated. If such an encounter occurs at night and a beam is directed at the observer from the UFO, try to determine if, in this beam, your hand or another object appears almost transparent, similar to an X-ray image. If, in such cases, we are indeed capable of seeing X-rays or gamma radiation, This would have great scientific significance and would confirm the hypothesis of chronons. There may also be other unexpected effects that could add something new to our understanding of UFOs. Thus, human contact with UFOs, while providing some information, raises more new questions. The wide range of UFO properties, which often contradict each other, has led to numerous attempts to explain their nature. These attempts are based both on known facts and on phenomena that fall outside the bounds of modern science and relate to manifestations of cosmic laws and their influence on the spiritual world of humans. One hypothesis, for example, is that UFOs are manifestations of invisible life forms that exist parallel to the physical world on Earth. What are these forms? According to the ancient Indian teaching of Agni Yoga, after a person's physical death, their spiritual essence does not die. It transitions into the subtle world as energetic clusters, only to reincarnate into another person after some time. This teaching, developed by Blavatsky and Roerich, is based not only on philosophy about the immortality of humans, but also on many facts that confirm it. There are numerous well-documented cases where 5- or 6-year-old children convincingly described events that took place in specific locations decades earlier. They further describe places they had never been to and recognize relatives from their previous lives. Tibetan monasteries still maintain the tradition of searching among boys for the reincarnated Lama. The boy who recognizes the belongings of the deceased Lama and describes the environment that existed during his tenure is ceremoniously proclaimed the new Lama. In the United States, a book by Professor Stevenson has been published, describing over 1,000 cases of reincarnation. In Raymond Moody's book, Life After Life, there are 150 documented accounts of people who experienced clinical death. They described pleasant sensations of lightness and weightlessness, where they felt they were separated from their bodies and seemed to observe them from outside. They then moved through a long tunnel or corridor, at the end of which was a bright light, where they were met by angelic beings. At that moment, they heard a voice say, "Not ready yet," after which they felt themselves back on the hospital bed. Later, they described in detail events that had occurred around them while their consciousness was utterly turned off. American scientists conducted an interesting study. They found that at the moment of death, a person loses several grams of weight. So what is this? Is it the departure of the soul in the form of an energy cluster? How can the Bulgarian clairvoyant Baba Vanga and many others determine where and under what circumstances a particular person died? Some psychics can even point to the location where a murder took place, providing genuine assistance in solving crimes. How can we explain this? Well, it's pretty simple. There is an energy information field surrounding the Earth, where information about each person's actions and thoughts are recorded like holograms. True psychics can extract information about the past, present, and even the future from it. This field may also contain the solution to the anomalous phenomena mentioned earlier. These and many other facts indicate the existence of a subtle world that influences our physical world. This idea was expressed by the ancient Greeks in the form of thinking ether, by the Russians in their teaching about the noosphere, where psychophysical energy accumulates, and by Tsiolkovsky in his thoughts about the radiant humanity. This idea was also expressed by Elena Blavatsky in her book The Secret Doctrine, which depicts the evolution of humanity through a chain of reincarnations of every individual until the emergence of highly developed personalities. It is logical to assume that elements of the subtle world can materialize under certain circumstances and manifest as UFOs. This idea is supported by repeated observations of UFOs emerging from mountain crevices from water. Nicholas Roerich wrote that somewhere in the Himalayas there is a mysterious place where all the knowledge about Earth and the universe is stored, and this place serves as a center of communication between Earth and the cosmos. The second hypothesis is that extraterrestrials are truly visiting Earth. It is entirely possible that civilizations on other planets have reached a level of development where they can create spacecraft capable of overcoming vast distances, and these ships are perceived by us as UFOs. After all, at roughly 4 million years old, humanity is still young. Compared to the age of the universe, This is indeed very little, and the likelihood that other civilizations have far outpaced us in their development is relatively high. This hypothesis is supported by data suggesting that the Moon serves as a kind of way station for UFOs on their way to Earth. Unexplained phenomena have long been observed on our satellite, which defy natural explanation. As far back as 1871, English astronomer Burt noticed moving objects of geometric shape in the crater of Pluto. In 1968, NASA issued a catalogue of lunar anomalies, listing unexplained incidents. These include moving objects, glowing phenomena, disappearing craters, trenches that change shape, and so on. There is evidence that Soviet and American astronauts saw inexplicable objects during their space missions, though they did not officially confirm this. According to one version, when Apollo 2 landed on the Moon, astronaut Armstrong saw a massive spacecraft in the distance. During the Apollo 12 mission, a flying object followed them, which the Americans initially thought was the last stage of the Saturn rocket. However, when trajectory corrections were made, this object also changed course and flew near the spacecraft. During the Apollo 13 mission, the Americans planned to detonate a small atomic bomb on the Moon to create an artificial tremor and obtain data about the Moon's infrastructure. However, during the mission, an oxygen tank exploded on the spacecraft, which, although not endangering the mission, made the experiment impossible. The hypothesis of extraterrestrials is also based on speculative conclusions that if there is a multiplicity of worlds, there must be some form of communication between them. The form of this communication depends on the capabilities of civilizations, and one of them could very well be UFOs. The argument that they are uninterested in communicating with us seems unconvincing. Indeed, any one of us would gladly talk to ants if it were possible. But of course, this is reasoning from a purely human perspective. There is no reason to believe that UFO crew members share the same views. Another extravagant hypothesis suggests that unidentified flying objects act as the guardians and carriers of life in the universe. It is believed that the universe pulses and is currently expanding due to the Big Bang that occurred about 15 billion years ago. It is also suggested that after several tens of billions of years, this expansion will reverse into contraction. In the conditions of the latter, when the incredible concentration of radiation from all the stars occurs, no life in the universe would be possible. During one of the universe's expansion cycles, primordial humanity might have emerged, reaching such a high stage of development that it solved the problem of encoding genes and recreating life. That is, converting the human physical body into an incorruptible informational biofield containing all the information about the person. Before the next contraction of the universe, this information would be concentrated in objects like UFOs, which, carrying all the data about the universe, would leave the danger zone and return only after the universe began expanding again. The question arises, how can they accomplish this? One possibility, as theoretical physicists suggest, is to travel through black holes into other worlds. There are grounds to believe that black holes are wells in space and time, and tunnels into different universes, where life could continue when it is no longer possible in our universe. However, this is purely speculative, though it is a fascinating area of thought. There is also a suggestive hypothesis about the origin of UFOs. According to this, UFOs are not material objects, but subjective impressions determined by people's mental states. In support of this hypothesis is the fact that, in some cases, UFOs behave as though they are phantoms or ghosts. They can slowly dissolve and disappear into the air, contract into a single point, or expand. Among observers standing nearby, some may see them clearly, while others do not. The same object may also be perceived in different forms, like a disk, sphere, or something completely indistinct. It is known that the human body is a realization of protein nucleic acid forms of life. But why couldn't other forms, such as field-based life forms, coexist with them? In this case, the symbiosis of such life forms could have led to the evolution of biological entities. However, as humans evolved, their field-based foundation became almost rudimentary and showed itself in only a small number of people. At the same time, it may still respond to external energetic influences. The process of our thinking is mysterious. Why, for example, does the human brain have a logical left hemisphere and an imaginative right hemisphere? Why, out of 14 to 15 billion brain cells, do we only use 8 to 10% of them throughout our lives? The general rule of evolutionary selection suggests that everything unnecessary in the body dies off. Therefore, a more than tenfold reserve of neurons is not superfluous. Some believe these reserve blocks are capable of receiving energy information. Evidence that energetic life forms play an important, though unrecognized role is provided by the unique research conducted by Indian researcher V.P. Kandahar. He placed sick cells in one flask and healthy cells of the same culture in another. The flasks, separated by a thick glass partition, stood next to each other for 20 hours. After this, sick cells were found among the healthy ones. There had been no direct contact between the cells in the two flasks, but the distorted biofield of the sick cells managed to infect the healthy ones. This fact could radically change our understanding of the causes and spread of various diseases and, more broadly, of the forms of information transmission that people continuously receive, either consciously or subconsciously, which determine their reactions to external circumstances. If, for example, telepathy cannot be explained by the action of any visible material factor, it may be the result of perceiving certain external energetic forms that resonate with human thoughts. This kind of resonance sensitivity may lead to people with heightened sensitivity who, under certain conditions, can experience the influence of external energetic fields. In this state, they may see specific images, the exact appearance of which depends on the subconscious tuning of the body to one form or another of perception of this field. Let us now talk about the landing sites and about contacts. These contacts, during which our minds sometimes behave strangely, as if not entirely realistically, should first and foremost be studied from the perspective of field-based forms of life. If, however, in some of these landing spots we also find a material component, the issue will undoubtedly become even more complicated. It seems that such a combination of circumstances is occurring in the so-called M triangle, where, judging by the descriptions of many witnesses, phantom objects of various shapes appear and disappear and exert an incomprehensible influence on the psyche of people. Geological studies have shown that the structure of the Earth's crust in these locations has many fractures. If the Earth indeed releases energy flows into space, these flows are particularly intense in such places. These are, so to speak, energy information channels between Earth and space. The cumulative effect of different energy fields can be perceived as objects of all kinds of shapes and sizes, glowing figures, human forms, or other optical and sound effects. Something similar likely occurs in the Bermuda Triangle and other geologically active areas. Furthermore, different observers see different scenes. Often there is a sensation of some external physical influence, discomfort, or fear. Each person sees what they are attuned to. Skeptics usually see nothing. Another question arises: how complete is the information we receive about UFOs? After all, the channels of human perception are quite limited. Even the use of radars presents new mysteries. Sometimes they do not register visible images of UFOs. However, considering that stealth planes have already been developed, which are practically undetectable by radars, this fact does not seem too surprising. But there are also instances where the reverse occurs. This means we only receive a partial view of the information about UFOs through visual observation. A similar phenomenon occurs when photographing UFOs. Sometimes they are not captured on film, and in other cases, other inexplicable objects appear. This fact caught the attention of the Italian engineer L. Boccone, who decided to expand the range of observations. In instances where instruments in his laboratory behaved strangely, he photographed the surrounding area in infrared and ultraviolet light, and also used various measuring instruments. In some cases, these photographs revealed invisible, spherical structures with certain light, heat, and other properties, which became known as critters. Boccone believes that these are manifestations of etheric life forms, which essentially aligns with Kandahar's ideas. Thus, the actual manifestations of UFOs are much broader than what we can directly perceive, and they are associated with the existence of still incomprehensible field effects. Sometimes, UFOs are divided into two types: entropic and evolutionary. The former appears as light phantoms of indefinite shape, which do not need a material saucer for movement. Still, they require energy recharge, which they receive from the people observing them. This is why those people are overwhelmed by feelings of fear, which can later be accompanied by various illnesses. The only way to counteract this is by not being afraid of them. Most UFOs belong to the evolutionary category. These are material objects with clear geometric shapes, and they generally do not evoke fear. Well-known American researcher John Keel believed they have a paraphysical nature, which allows them to appear as material objects or ghosts. He based this on the fact that UFOs do not obey the natural laws known to us. They transmit information to humanity, which in some cases takes the form of friendly advice or warnings, while in others it seems like an attempt to deceive people. Keel believes their ultimate goal is to make people think that there is a higher power that can control them. In other words, UFOs are a Trojan horse that we accept, study, and try to solve, but which may capture our minds and lead us to an unknown goal, which could be aimed either for the benefit or detriment of humanity. These reflections resonate somewhat with another viewpoint on UFOs, which is developed based on theological doctrines by Hieromonk Seraphim Rose. He notes that spiritual texts mention many cases of the sudden appearance of bodily beings capable of communicating with people, influencing them, sometimes abducting them, or instantly disappearing. These past events are very similar to the actions of modern UFO visitors. In the past, such phenomena were associated with the actions of demonic forces. Today, they are linked to extraterrestrial visitors. Rose believes that UFO phenomena are purely spiritual issues, involving concepts of good and evil. Therefore, they cannot be explained from the perspective of objective science. Modern UFO researchers regard UFOs as manifestations of the physical world, though some admit that unidentified flying objects may also arise from the real non-physical world. Rose believes that the correct interpretation of UFOs can only be made based on Christian inspiration. A person cannot comprehend the invisible world of angels and demons, but they have enough Christian knowledge to understand how these beings act and how their actions should be regarded. He links the increased appearance of UFOs today to the idea that a new invasion of demons is being sent against humanity, and that the theory of visitors from space is merely a means to convince people that higher beings are preparing to take responsibility for the future fate of humanity. Therefore, S. Rose's position is based on the idea that low forces of the spiritual world can materialize as UFOs, seeking to divert humanity from the proper path. This extreme viewpoint, supported by purely religious reasoning, denies any connection of UFOs to the real world. It illustrates how complex this problem is and how many attempts are being made to solve it based on the most varied ideas. Any hypothesis can claim truth only when it is able to logically and consistently generalize known facts, explain them, and predict new phenomena. In the case of UFO hypotheses, this is not happening. After all, each one can exhibit, at best, only some of the highly contradictory manifestations of these objects. It is possible that in the surrounding megaworld, under certain conditions, the material-energy duality of UFOs manifests. Thus, we perceive them in different forms, depending on which properties embedded in UFOs become more pronounced. They can be entirely material objects, but they can also be creations that appear only in the imagination of certain people. The already mentioned Jacques Vallée, one of the founders of ufology as a science of UFOs, wrote that we do not know, and may never know, the mysteries of UFO phenomenon. He believed that even if we locked 20 geniuses in the same room and asked them to solve the problem, the answers would evade us. This is a very pessimistic, yet not unfounded assessment. The human mind inherently strives to know the unknown. This is the natural path of its evolutionary development. All kinds of anomalous phenomena only accelerate this process, stimulating the development of new methods for understanding the world. Even if the question posed is not answered, the study of UFOs will help deepen our understanding of the surrounding world, which is diverse in its manifestations, unlimited in space and time, and infinite in its exploration. Still, we do not give up. Let us begin this section with questions that have likely crossed everyone's mind at some point. How did life originate on Earth? Are we alone in the universe? Can a civilization, once it arises, develop indefinitely, or is self-destruction inherent in its structure? And another complex philosophical question: are there cosmic laws that regulate the development of life on one planet depending on the development of the cosmos as a whole? These questions have been pondered by great scientists and philosophers who sought to answer them based on scientific data and their own reflections. The great Belgian scientist V.I. Janssen, when addressing the problem of the origin of life, came to the conclusion that there were no azoic, lifeless periods of time on our planet. He also noted that all living things come from other living things. However, when discussing the problem of the origin of life, he noted that science is unable to provide an answer to this question, since the method of scientific inquiry cannot extend beyond the analysis of known facts and phenomena. The American scientist M. Hart believes that if Earth's orbit were 5% closer to the Sun, our planet would resemble scorching Venus, and if it were 2% farther, it would have turned into a cold, Mars-like wasteland. Therefore, it appears that our life exists on a razor's edge, and the slightest changes in climate or other external conditions could destroy it. The history of life on Earth is filled with mysteries. For example, why did dinosaurs become extinct during the Cretaceous period? And what form might humanity have taken if they hadn't? What role have numerous geological catastrophes and abrupt climate changes played on our planet? According to the theory of French naturalist Georges Cuvier, these disasters created the conditions for the development of more advanced life forms. Is it coincidental that different mineral resources formed in Earth's crust, without which civilization would not have been able to develop at all? Finally, why does water defy other substances with its maximum density at 4 degrees Celsius? After all, if its density increased when freezing, ice would not form a protective layer on the surface of bodies of water, but instead would sink to the bottom, making life in them impossible. One could view the probability that such uniquely favorable circumstances for life arose on Earth as mere chance. However, others suggest that as soon as the geological conditions of our planet became suitable for the development of life, the seeds of life in the form of DNA molecules or field forms were brought to Earth by extraterrestrial intelligences. If so, these forms were clearly resilient enough to survive many catastrophes and reached a high level of self-organization that ensured their survival and continuous development. But why should Earth be an exception? Both general reasoning and astronomical observations indicate that other stars must have their own planetary systems. Among the hundreds of billions of stars in our galaxy, surely there are many planets where conditions are favorable for the development of life in all its diverse forms. Nature never creates anything in just a single copy. The idea of the multiplicity of worlds originated in ancient philosophical schools, such as the Milesian and Pythagorean, and gained new strength in the teachings of Nicholas of Cusa and Leonardo da Vinci. The notion of numerous islands of life existing in the universe was expressed by philosophers and scientists like Voltaire, Lomonosov, Kant, Laplace, Newton, Arrhenius, and others. At the same time, the natural question has always arisen: if civilizations exist around us, why don't their representatives visit Earth and send any signals of their presence? The International Program to Search for Extraterrestrial Civilizations, SETI, was designed to answer this when it launched in 1960. The program was based on estimates suggesting that our galaxy might contain up to 10,000 planets where life similar to Earth's could exist. If the development of civilization on some of these planets reached our level, their radio signals could be detected on Earth. On the other hand, the level of Earth's radio emissions is now so great that advanced civilizations, if they were located even a few dozen light-years from us, could notice it and might respond in some way. Over 60 years of research under this program have yielded no results. No intelligent signals from space have been detected. However, even this result has great scientific and philosophical significance. It can be explained by three hypotheses. Intelligent life does not exist in our immediate vicinity, within 6,000 light-years of Earth. Civilizations exist, but their development follows a different path, one not connected to technological advancement. There are means of cosmic communication other than radio waves that can rapidly or instantly transmit information, and extraterrestrial civilizations use these. The first possibility is almost always considered, but the degree to which it is substantiated can be illustrated by the following hypothetical example. Let's imagine that on some island, lost in the ocean, lives a primitive tribe whose entire world is limited to this territory. The tribe's advanced members suspect that other tribes must exist beyond their island. They wish to establish contact, and to do so, they take drums to the shore and beat them, announcing their presence to the world, listening for a drumbeat in response. Hearing none, they conclude, logically enough for themselves, that their tribe is alone on Earth. Are we not like them? Here, we base our assumptions on the anthropological principle, which holds that life in the universe can only take forms similar to those on Earth. And we assume that the only means of establishing contact are light or radio waves. Indeed, they are an excellent means of transmitting information within the limits of our planet. However, we cannot be sure that extraterrestrial civilizations use them for communication. Who would agree to wait thousands of years, or even just years, for a reply? The second hypothesis leads to the conclusion that there could be many possible paths of development for different civilizations. Indeed, what grounds do we have to claim that on planets with different climatic conditions, atmospheric compositions, gravitational forces, surface structures, and chemical elements, life must take forms similar to those on Earth and evolve according to our evolutionary laws? Finally, why should protein-based life be the only possibility? But it is this very combination of conditions that determines the potential for the emergence of civilizations and their paths of development. There is no reason to assume that these paths would replicate the history of human development. Other civilizations may have access to different materials and may use energy sources entirely distinct from ours. In this case, their technology would look nothing like ours, and their social relations, state systems, if they even have states, and spiritual levels may differ significantly from what has developed on Earth. At one time, attempts were made to find highly developed technogenic civilizations by looking for their thermal emissions. It was assumed that the more advanced they were, the more energy they consumed, and the waste of such civilizations would be intense thermal or infrared radiation. These attempts, based on the anti-ecological concept inherent in our society, were also fruitless, somewhat confirming the possibility of a more economical development of humanity. There is no direct evidence that the second hypothesis is being realized, but the very fact of UFO appearances utilizing unknown but potent energy sources may suggest this. Similarly, the metallic suits of the extraterrestrial beings, which apparently protect them from the unfamiliar technological radiation, may support this view. It is also possible that the Earth's intense electromagnetic radiation draws their attention, and this could be one of the reasons for their more frequent appearances on our planet recently. The varying heights of extraterrestrial visitors and their different reactions to human behavior may indicate that they represent civilizations from different planets, each at various levels of development. But in all cases, our guests are humanoid, which may suggest that this body structure is the most efficient, at least for the area of space closest to Earth. If the third hypothesis is correct, it requires us to rethink our approach to the cosmos. We are familiar with a limited number of physical fields and their interactions. The most well-studied is the electromagnetic field. However, gravitons, the quanta of the gravitational field, which are believed to propagate at the speed of light, have not yet been detected. Nuclear interactions, according to current understanding, cannot manifest on cosmic scales because they operate over extremely short distances. The theory of relativity establishes the ultimate speed of signal propagation, 300,000 kilometers per second. But how complete is our knowledge of all possible fields and types of interactions? It may be as incomplete as our knowledge of all possible forms of life and paths of development. Therefore, we cannot exclude the possibility that there are fields in which signals can propagate at much higher speeds. These could be the tachyons introduced by theoretical physicists, or, as already mentioned, gravitational fields. The hypothetical density of time, chronons, exits into other spaces, or finally, energy information phenomena. However, establishing the ultimate speed of signal transmission is of fundamental importance. If we accept the concept that the speed of information transmission is limited by the speed of light, this essentially means acknowledging the impossibility of contact between civilizations in space. The cosmos would be a collection of unconnected worlds between which any communication is impossible. Conversely, the assumption of the possibility of fast or instantaneous signal transmission presents a picture of a unified universe. UFOs give the answer to which of these three hypotheses is correct, even if they are a materialized manifestation of the Earth's subtle world. This does not exclude the possibility that similar phenomena occur on other planets. And since energy fields can easily move through space, contact between such UFOs would not be a problem. Therefore, it may be inappropriate to distinguish between UFOs of earthly and extraterrestrial origin. They are all manifestations of an unknown unified cosmic law. However, the presence of materialized UFOs in various forms, with extraterrestrial beings differing in appearance and behavior, provides grounds to believe that the latter come from other planets. According to the stories of contactees, these UFOs are capable of traveling almost instantly across distances of dozens of light years. If this was simply suggested to them, for what purpose? It is unlikely to deceive them, but rather to demonstrate their capabilities and give an idea of the appearance of other planets. Therefore, all these reflections suggest that the second and third hypotheses are not without foundation. In this case, we see a picture of civilizations in our galaxy at different stages of development, capable of exchanging information quickly and, perhaps, assisting each other when necessary, even preventing undesirable outcomes. Let us once again refer to the information that came to us through various contactees. One may choose to take it seriously or not. Nonetheless, it is food for thought. The contactees had no selfish motives in these cases, and in any event, their names remain unknown. Moreover, their accounts discuss things that could only benefit humanity. One such account about the reasons for UFO visits to our planet is presented here. Our planet arose a long time ago, much earlier than humans can imagine. It was 5 times larger than the present Earth and existed in a completely different part of the cosmos. At that time, it was inhabited by intelligent beings similar to us. They followed a technocratic path of development, which eventually led to a nuclear war, and that civilization could not be saved. At that point, the representatives of the Green Civilization, who play the role of rescuers in the cosmic circle of intelligence, moved what remained of Earth to its current location in the solar system. In order not to disrupt the movement of other planets, they introduced a 10th planet, which is the remnants of the old Earth and which orbits the Sun in the opposite direction of all the other planets. Our astronomers have long suspected the existence of this 10th planet. To the new Earth, they added a satellite, the Moon, which has specific functions that we will only understand when we understand the structure of its core. To this Earth, the seeds of modern humanity were introduced in the form of protein forms, and then something happened that they did not expect. For some reason, humans acquired an energy shell, a biofield or soul, that does not die after their physical death. The potential of this shell is limitless, but humans are almost unaware of it. In it lies the future of technological thought, medicine, and our spirituality. However, it also has its negatives, the most significant being overly developed emotions. It is through these emotions that we love, hate, suffer, rebel, and generally behave like thoughtless particles in Brownian motion. Except for us, no one in the universe lives like this. Yet surprisingly, they envy us. We are a small wonder of the universe. Our energy shells are unique, and our development intersects with the development of many civilizations. But we behave like irresponsible children from whom anything can be expected, even that they will blow up their planet along with themselves. Therefore, humanity is an excellent experimental material for them, and they come to Earth to take samples of humanity. It turns out that there is even competition between different civilizations in studying humanity, and among them, there are black civilizations that feed on our energy. These civilizations can synthesize human shells and use them for their own purposes. Overall, they believe that humanity, since the time of the Roman Empire, has been developing along a rigid, technocratic path which has never brought anything good. In this sense, the experiment of introducing life is considered a failure. However, they have faith in us, study us, occasionally give advice, and hope that humanity will be able to channel its energy towards raising its spiritual level. Only then will it be able to take its place in the cosmic circle of intelligence. Our history and current state look quite different, but even more instructive from the perspective of the so-called cosmic messages to humanity. This text was transmitted in 1976 to a doctor tourist on the island of Valayam by a dying cancer patient. Many who have studied it consider the text to be authentic. It says that a coalition observer unit exists in the universe, monitoring the development of civilization on Earth. The first message was sent to humans in 576 BCE, the second in 711 CE, and the third, as already mentioned, in 1976. In the latest message, it is reported that 220,000 intelligent races in the universe have already joined the coalition. However, the earthly civilization cannot be admitted for several reasons. First, the authors of the messages believe that humanity is exceptionally warlike. Almost continuous wars that have been waged on Earth are associated with sharp discontinuities and frequent changes in social systems and external political conditions. In the view of cosmic observers, if such historical processes on Earth continue in the future as they have in the past, wars may not decrease for another 12,000 years. However, they believe that if these causes are eliminated, wars could cease within the next 100 years. Secondly, they consider our way of thinking to be the most primitive, as our logic is based on a discrete foundation rather than a continuous one. The basis of our logical thinking consists only of two concepts, yes and no, which we apply even when analyzing the most complex problems. Meanwhile, the development of thought occurs through a continuous process. Therefore, our search is primarily reduced to choosing between two extreme possibilities, while the truth often lies somewhere in between. We are capable of thinking only in abstract and discrete terms, believing that the number of characteristics of an object is finite. For example, to the absurd question of the primacy of matter or spirit, our various philosophical systems give diametrically opposed answers. Humanity, in its current state of intellectual development, is unnecessary for the coalition, just as the coalition is unnecessary for humanity. A necessary condition for joining the coalition is the restructuring of the logical foundation of our thinking and the transition to a mode of continuous thought. They are convinced that our understanding of the evolution of life is incorrect. We liken a race to an individual living being and believe that aging and death are inevitable. Therefore, people do not strive to improve their moral qualities, leave further development to chance, and direct their efforts toward the excessive satisfaction of material needs. This will eventually lead to the extinction of the human race, whereas the task of evolution is to develop new races based on assimilating the best traits of older ones. Finally, our cosmological views are far from the truth. The solar system and life on Earth originated from a cloud of dust that was seeded by construction teams from the coalition in that part of the universe which met two primary conditions for the emergence of organic life: sufficient distance from other stars and a spatial dimensionality. Our belief that space is everywhere is mistaken. The dimensionality of space in the universe varies widely, but the best conditions for the emergence of organic life occur where it equals 3.14159. The closeness of this value to the number 3 led to the unjustified conclusion that our space is three-dimensional. Significant deviations from the value of pi are fatal to all living things. At the same time, a gravitational cyclone with a negative dimensionality of negative 3.15 is drifting near the outskirts of our galaxy, which could touch it with its edge and destroy life on Earth. Assistance could be provided to Earthlings, But for that, humanity needs to join the coalition. Our ideas about the existence of unchanging laws of the universe and the immutability of fundamental physical constants are also considered incorrect. For example, the gravitational constant we have measured changes noticeably even within the solar system, not to mention across cosmic distances. Ignorance of this leads to significant errors in determining the size of our galaxy and the emergence of a false theory about the expansion of galaxies. These mistakes should not be considered accidental, as they are a result of our way of thinking. The coalition can assist Earth only after the elimination of humanity's warlike tendencies, the elevation of its moral standards, and the mastery of continuous logical thinking. It should be noted that regardless of where these messages come from, the information they contain forces us to seriously reflect. They accurately identify our eternal problems, highlight the key issues of our existence and interpersonal relationships, and stress the need for societal improvement. Perhaps this indeed requires a different way of thinking, which we do not yet possess. Thus, we are a unique, one-of-a-kind, relatively advanced and very emotional civilization that unfortunately is developing along the wrong path, which may ultimately destroy it. But if this is the case, then why is this information passed on to random individuals rather than, say, to government leaders who could actually influence the state of affairs in society? Perhaps such a question arises from purely human logic. It is impossible to change anything until the awareness of the need for such a change permeates the broader population. In this case, given the clash of individual, group, and national interests, there is no basis for this yet. And it's not just about material wealth. The spiritual development of society in economically developed countries as a whole is hardly higher than in less developed ones. A radical change in human consciousness is needed, an overcoming of selfishness, the subordination of one's interests, and a greater understanding of the interests of others. Therefore, humanity must live by the principle, I can only be well when everyone else is well. Unfortunately, we are still far from such understanding. So why don't other civilizations act more actively to convey the necessity of changing human behavior? According to contactees, the laws of the cosmos prohibit any direct intervention. Firstly, the help of the higher beings would kill the immunity of the lower ones. It is death in an embrace for them. The process of development must occur through the resolution of internal contradictions, and elevated consciousness cannot be imposed from outside. Secondly, this could lead to a catastrophe in the minds of people whose brains are not capable of comprehending a flood of concepts that go beyond those that have gradually formed throughout human evolution. After all, it is only possible to openly demonstrate one's presence to civilizations that have already passed the relevant stages of development and for whom self-destruction as a result of such contacts is no longer a threat. In other words, the elevation of spirituality must become an inner need for each of us. Then the causes of many unnecessary technical and social problems will disappear. For example, industrial development and the use of various energy sources have created very complex issues. We are acutely aware of the social tensions and environmental consequences to which this has led. However, UFOs use entirely different materials, technologies, and energy sources. What would happen if they gave us information about them? All of human history shows that, first of all, it would be used to create new types of weapons. Sooner or later, even unintentionally, this would likely lead to the destruction of all living things on Earth. The increased appearance of UFOs on Earth may be a consequence of serious environmental disturbances to our planet. The intensive development of industry, the excessive consumption of natural resources, and the enormous amount of waste are significantly altering natural processes. There is widespread pollution of the air, water bodies, and soil. Acid rain is becoming more frequent. Harmful chemical compounds are increasingly concentrated in food products, and the overall radiation background has nearly doubled. And all of this is called scientific and technical progress. Previously, humanity did not have the technical means to harm nature. Now it does. Nature responds to such treatment with an increase in various diseases and genetic abnormalities in humans, as well as numerous cataclysms. Where will this path lead humanity? If a subtle world exists parallel to ours on Earth, how should it react to such human activity? How might other highly developed civilizations view this? After all, if they are indeed a unified whole, they must care about the fate of their home, which includes the solar system and our Earth. The consequences of humanity's activities may manifest not only in visible ecological changes, but also on the subtle energetic plane. The consequences of humanity's activities may manifest not only in visible ecological changes, but also on the subtle energetic plane, materializing emotions such as anger, dissatisfaction, irritation, and hopelessness. These changes could create negative energy fields of high concentration to spread across the surface of the Earth in the form of dark clouds and rise upwards, perhaps dissipating into space. This picture of dark energy flows, especially intensively emanating from zones of natural or social disaster, is described by some contactees. Perhaps the appearance of UFOs on Earth is one manifestation of cosmic cooperation between civilizations and a warning to us. In this case, they are scouts assessing the situation on Earth, the spiritual state of humanity, and possibly collectors of Earth's energetic waste. But how long will they continue to collect it? History shows that the development of humanity is characterized by leaps. Such leaps include the use of fire, the invention of the wheel and other simple mechanisms, mastery of steam power, electricity, and atomic energy. After each leap, the development of civilization slowed down for a certain time until the prerequisites for the next qualitative leap forward were created. However, a characteristic feature can be observed. The first leaps were separated by many millennia. Gradually, they began to shrink to centuries and even decades. It is true that many ancient sources mention the existence of highly developed prehistorical civilizations. These include Atlantis and an even older Lemurian civilization. They perished because even then, there were problems in human relations similar to those of today. Must each new civilization start its development from scratch? The Earth is estimated to be 4 to 5 billion years old. Perhaps during the last billion years, the natural conditions on Earth were favorable for the development of humanity. Then how many civilizations have existed here and perished irreversibly? However, it is impossible to imagine that in each civilization its destruction is programmed, as this contradicts both human and cosmic laws of progressive development. What awaits our civilization, and is the increase in UFO sightings related to its fate? Regarding the first part of this question, it can be noted that in nature, there are many ways to self-regulate large collectives of living creatures. For example, when locusts multiply excessively, biological laws come into play that cause the self-destruction of the overgrown population. The same happens with termites, migratory birds, and other creatures. This may also apply to the human population. If self-regulation laws operate on Earth, why can't they operate across the cosmos? Since the latter represents an organized system, this means that on the one hand, chaotic processes are taking place that increase its entropy, while on the other hand, processes are occurring that structure its organization and accumulate information. Only reason can, it seems, realize anti-entropy processes. Therefore, the universe can be viewed as a living system capable of self-organization, supporting reason in all its forms. I believe, noted academician A.D. Sakharov, that there is some inner meaning in the existence of the universe. Without it, life would be boring. This thought is shared by other scientists and thinkers. For example, Soviet psychologist V.M. Pushkin believes that just as the masses of physical bodies create a gravitational field, thinking beings form the informational field of the universe. American philosopher S. Cram wrote that the universe is so vast that it is hard to imagine it is not collectively a unified world mind, feeling the commotion of billions of living beings on all the habitable planets. Stars and galaxies are merely the neurons of this mind. Such a version explains much about our world, including phenomena like UFOs and contact with extraterrestrials. But perhaps our commotion on Earth could cause a more severe headache for the world mind, and it is not excluded that it will have to resort to surgical methods of treatment. This provides an answer to the second part of the question regarding the role of UFOs. It seems that the cosmic mind can take on any form convenient for it. including that of UFOs. These objects diagnose the health of humanity and offer it medicine for healing. The rest depends on us, on whether we can make use of this medicine, which gives us a chance to heal spiritually, or else the surgical method will be applied. In conclusion, I would like to make this comparison. At the end of the 19th century, one of the leading physicists of the time, W. Thomson, wrote, "Today it can be confidently said that almost all the laws of physics have been discovered, only small details remain to be polished." But the torrent of unexpected discoveries that occurred at the turn of the 19th and 20th centuries, X-rays, radioactivity, quanta of radiation, the emergence of the special theory of relativity, shattered the harmonious structure of classical physics. These discoveries did not correspond to the established concepts of the time. They were perceived as anomalies, as a revision of the entire concept of the universe. However, based on such discoveries, humanity made an enormous technical and industrial leap forward, which significantly improved its material standard of living, and at the same time gave rise to many new problems, including those threatening the very existence of humanity. Today, 100 years later, more and more facts and phenomena are accumulating that again fall under the category of anomalous and cannot be explained from the perspective of modern science. Their influence on our lives is increasing, and this clearly indicates a lack of well-being in society. Understanding these phenomena must be sought on a new scientific, philosophical, and spiritual basis. If this happens, it will be another great leap forward for society as a whole, corresponding to the inexhaustible but untapped potential that is inherent in each of us. So the UFO problem remains. The more we try to clarify it, the more new questions arise. Almost every one of these questions provides a basis for serious scientific research and philosophical reflection, the results of which could radically change our understanding of ourselves, the essence of phenomena in the surrounding world, and how we perceive them. What potential lies within each individual, and how do these potentials intertwine to determine the development of social relations and the state of society as a whole? Could it be that our traditional psychology and sociology cannot answer these questions because they fail to account for the influence of energy information exchange, which subconsciously determines our behavior? But it is precisely UFOs and other anomalous phenomena that could most quickly reveal the essence of the crown of nature's creation. What we call scientific and technical progress is a dead-end path, already showing its extremely negative consequences and which may ultimately lead to irreversible changes in the health and genetic development of people. At the same time, studying UFOs provides grounds to believe that there are completely different ways to meet human needs that do not require mindless consumption of natural resources and the production of material goods on an ever-increasing scale. There are tentative ideas that humanity could make use of them. However, it seems that mastering new technologies and energy sources will be impossible without a fundamental change in social relations and an elevation of the moral foundations of society. It is highly likely that a universal law is at work here, which proclaims that the development of technical means should not exceed the level at which the self-destruction of civilization becomes possible. And only the spiritual state of civilization will determine what that level will be. New facts about anomalous phenomena continuously add something new to our knowledge of them. If there is a critical mass of knowledge, it will inevitably lead to an explosion of our ideas about who we are, how the surrounding world is constructed, and how the boundless possibilities of this world can only benefit humanity.